Hello, good morning. Good morning to you from wherever you're joining us from. Good morning from Nigeria. This is Building from Ground Up, and today we'll be speaking with Jessica Hope. This Building from Ground Up is an initiative of the UK Nigerian Tech Hub. The UK Nigerian Tech Hub is an initiative by the UK government Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport to support the growth of the technology ecosystem in Nigeria. The UK Nigerian Tech Hub works to stimulate local digital economies, support inclusive and sustainable economic growth and jobs, build high-end digital skills, and forge innovative partnership between Nigeria tech sectors and international businesses. And today we'll be talking to Jessica Hope, the founder and CEO of Wimbat. Before I bring Jessica on, I would like to do a brief introduction of Jessica. She's someone I really like the work she has done in the ecosystem. So Jessica is the founder and CEO of Wimbat, a public relations agency focused on Africa and emerging markets. She started Wimbat in 2014, 7 years ago, and has gone on to build the leading tech-focused PR agency, working with some of the continent's most exciting and well-funded brands and companies. And when you hear some of these brands that Jessica Wimbat has worked with, I'm sure you'll be impressed. She graduated from the University of Manchester with a BA in history and an MA in religion and politics, and has worked as a journalist and editor for a number of years prior to starting her own PR company. She has worked with the Natural History Museum and the Jewish Museum, and was head of communications for African entertainment brand Iroko. I know most of us, we know that one. She's an expert in her field with over 13 years experience in communication. Jessica and her team have crafted strategic, impactful media campaigns and communication for both seed stage and venture-backed startup, as well as entrepreneurs and public bodies for over 4 years. She was in PR Week's Power Book in 2019, in 2020, and also in 2021. She was earmarked as Provokes top 25 EMEA innovator in 2020. She is a mentor for UK-based BMA PR pros and also for Google Launchpad Africa. Before I bring Jessica up, let me tell you what the Building from Ground Up is. Like I said, is an initiative of the UK Nigerian Tech Hub in partnership with TechPoint Africa. This is a program where we seek to build startup founders, innovators, and entrepreneurs across Nigeria and the United Kingdom. So basically what we do in this program is to bring people who has built successful businesses in the ecosystem to ask them and learn from them how they've been able to do it over time. With that said, I would like to welcome Jessica. Hi, Jessica, are you there?
Hey, Christopher, nice to meet you. Nice to see everyone.
Hi, Jessica. It's nice to meet you. Like I said yesterday when we spoke, I'm a big fan of the work you've done so far. Before we go into the question, if I may ask, how does it feel? How does it feel 7 years down the line, looking at something that started like a dream that you just looked at and said, okay, let's do this and see where it takes us. And you are here at this point in time at the moment. How does that feel?
Yeah, it feels odd. So like Wimbat is kind of like a mistake of a company, like in a good way. You know, I started it like pregnant from my kitchen table, just thinking, oh, I'll just, Iroko was my first client. And I thought I'll just probably just work with Iroko still, maybe one other client. And then it just kind of grew from there. So yeah, it was never really, I was at the time never that strategic about it. I just kind of knew I had a niche. I was still working with Iroko and Jason, but almost like a freelance capacity. And then 7 years later, almost 7 years later now, there's like 11 of us. And as a team, we've probably worked with like over 60 different like African tech companies. So yeah, it's crazy in a good way.
Okay, great. So to start up with, I wanted to ask, because from your bar and what I know, you were in the UK doing your thing, and then you had Jason approached you to come become the head of communications for Iroko. Do you mind walking us through that and how that went during that time?
Yeah, so Jason and I had actually been at university together, and we'd had, I worked as a magazine editor for him. We had the same group of friends, and then Jason moved back down. This was at University of Manchester. Jason moved back down to London a bit before me, and then I moved back down to London, and we were just like friends, had the same group of friends, used to hang out. And then he just started, he was doing all sorts of hustles, nothing was really working for him. And then all of a sudden, he just kind of picked up on this like Nollywood idea, and I kind of like was enthusiastic as a friend, but wasn't really sure where it was going. And then when he raised his Series A, I was head of press at the Jewish Museum in London, and Jason just called me one day and he was like, I need you to quit your job and join Iroko. So I quit my job and joined Iroko. 4 weeks later, I was working at Iroko. 5 weeks after, I think I was in New York, setting up the New York office for Iroko. And it literally just went from there. Like it was early crazy stages of like startup life.
Okay, great. Sorry, hello, attendees, participants. Please, there will be a time for you to ask questions. Ask questions, any question you want Jessica to reply to. We'll have a section after our conversation where she will answer to those questions. So please keep those questions coming. Okay, Jessica, going on from there, what then sparked your interest? Because obviously you were doing well with your job, and what sparked your interest in the Africa tech ecosystem? What was that thing that sparked your interest that made you decide that, okay, I'm going to try out with these guys and see where that leads me?
So funnily enough, it wasn't just when I started at Iroko, it wasn't just the tech side of things. I was kind of interested in the Nollywood side of things, because part of my job was also like taking, I took like Mama G on a like trip to South Africa. Cool. And we were together for a week and we like traveled a lot in South Africa. I did a trip once with like Uche Jumbo in like New York, I think, as well. So I was also dealing with the celebrity and the entertainment side of things, which I'd never really done before as well. So I was interested in that, but I think obviously another part of my job was working with Jason to build Iroko's profile, build his brand, because at that time, this was like 10 years ago. And it was actually quite difficult. I'm sure it is hard now, but like as a Nigerian internet entrepreneur, it was very difficult to open doors in Silicon Valley. Like all the people who were like having all these calls with investors and partnerships these days, like it's a lot easier. 10 years ago, it was very hard. So we had to kind of like raise Jason's profile in the press and Iroko's profile so he could open those doors and start those conversations with people in the US and in the UK as well, as he continued to like grow the company and for talent acquisition as well. So it was that I just found it really interesting, like all the stuff that we were doing with Iroko, building the tech side of things and building that network there. But again, everything was so new and it was quite early days. So I think that was a good time to be part of it because you just kind of all grew up together and all built together. I got to work with some really cool, through Iroko as well, like meet and work with some really cool people.
Great. So that was a very great learning experience for you, learning about not just the PR side of things, but also the movie and all of that. Wow, happy to hear that. And then there was an article I saw where you said that Jason then encouraged you to start up your own thing. Could you talk us through that? And how did you feel at that moment? Did you have these jitters in your stomach that says, oh my God, would this work? How do I go about it?
Yeah,
how was that?
Weirdly enough, so Jason and I had a conversation once in South Africa about you know, he was like someone in the tech ecosystem had asked Jason if he could subcontract me to them because they wanted to kind of raise their profile as well. And Jason was like, oh, I think there's a business here for you. I was like, nah. I was like, are you trying to fire me? What's going on? And then I think it just kind of grew, and he was like thinking about it a lot, and he was like, Jess, you actually just have to leave Iroko. Like, you'll hit a glass ceiling in Iroko. You have a skill and you have a business opportunity here. So yeah, in amazing like active friendship, it kicked me out of Iroko. And I started up on my own, and I was a bit nervous, but I think I was so fortunate. Like, Winbot does not exist without Jason and Iroko, right? Like, Jason forced me to do it. He was the one who planted the seeds in my mind, and I think having worked with him so long, I did probably pick up a few entrepreneurial skills and ideas along the way, and access to people and seeing people operate and build a business is so important. So I think that I was kind of subconsciously learning a lot whilst I was working very closely with him and the rest of the team at Iroko. So I was nervous, but I think for me, you know, my building from the ground was literally like eased in a way that, you know, I left Iroko, but then they were my first client as well. Right. So Jason did make it very easy for me. So there's no like struggle story like other people. It's not like there weren't as many struggles as maybe other entrepreneurs did. I was fortunate to have like amazing friend, amazing mentor, and, you know, an opportunity was there, and I had like it was easy to have my first client.
Okay, following up with that, do you think it's something that is necessary for any early stage startup founder to find out those kind of mentors, or people who they can be accountable to, people who can, like you said with Jason, put some little pressure on them to get work done? Do you think that is necessary along this journey?
I think it's definitely helps, because, you know, you do need your friends at these times as well, and it helps if your friends are kind of tuned into your sector and your space, and they know what you're doing. And, you know, Jason, I'm sure, like, he introduced me to people as well. You know, I built my network on the back of, you know, my time at Iroko. And interestingly, I found that, you know, it was important, but I didn't want to be pigeonholed. I didn't just want to be like that girl from Iroko as well. So it was important for me, obviously, to like leverage my, you know, the network and the name that I built for myself doing the work at Iroko, but also build beyond that as well. But those friendships are really important. And, you know, I remember when I was, you know, working, Iroko was my first client, and then I had one other, I think. And I, you know, I had a young child at the time as well. I was working from home. And, you know, I said to Jason, oh, we were just chatting one day. I said, oh, so-and-so contacted me, but I just can't take on I can't do any more work at the moment. And in a friendly way, he just shouted at me, and he was like, how are you turning down free money? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, people are coming to you, they want to spend their money with you, and you're saying no. Like, how is that a thing? So it's at that stage, and I started seeing myself less as a freelancer and thinking, well, maybe I'll hire someone else. Like, maybe I need a bit more slack. So yeah, so that's basically, you know, Jason kind of pushing me to hire someone and then go from being a freelancer to actually a business.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, so I can hear you now.
Hi, Jessica, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So let's take it up from where you just stopped, about being that you hired one more person, right? For most early stage startup founders, one thing they always most of them complain about is being able to have access to the right talent. How were you able to navigate that? How were you able to get the right people to work with, and what are the challenges you faced while trying to do that?
So again, I was pretty fortunate, and I looked within my own networks, and my first hire was Maria, and Maria had actually worked for me at Iroko. She was on my team, but she had done a lot of the Nollywood content and social activity. And then we just stayed friends. Like, we were really, like, just got on really well, worked well together. She then left and got a PR job for like a UK survey polling company. And she, you know, in fact, she came to my son's first birthday. I've invited her, and she was just saying she wasn't really loving her job. And I was like, oh, well, I'm starting to scale the business. And we just kept in touch. And then, yeah, so she was my first hire. She didn't really know that much about African tech, actually, funnily enough. She, had a solid grounding in PR because she'd worked at Orocco, and then she'd worked in this other place for a year or so. But yeah, we just kept chatting. And then I was really nervous about hiring someone because once you offer to pay people, it's a social contract, right? So you've got to, all of a sudden, you're putting yourself under more pressure to earn. So I think, we kind of came up with a structure. I was like, look, I can probably afford to pay you for like 30 hours a week. Let's see how it goes. After like 2 months, I'll know that if this is a thing and we get more clients, then, we'll go from there. But if after 2 months it's not working, I'll pay you for another month. But in that time, you can look for another job. Like it was trust and faith and hustle. So yeah, she was like absolutely like central to that growth. And for a very long time, it was just me and Maria like hustling. And we used to work from like hotel reception for free internet.
Oh, great. So after Maria, who was the next person, and how were you able to get that person to be a part of the team?
Yeah, so the next person then was Ernie. I think she joined us probably after about a year or so, just it being me and Maria. And again, it was networks, but this is kind of like the power of PR and networking and getting yourself out there. I think I was speaking at an event in the UK for like Black PR professionals. And I got chatting to this woman and I said, oh, we're getting a lot of work in at the moment, but like we're trying to hire again, but I don't really know how to go about it. And she was like, oh, well, you know what? This lady sent me her CV. We're not kind of recruiting at that level at the moment, but I'd be happy to you should check her out. And that was Ernie. And it went from there. And Ernie had like a really solid background in kind of a lot of corporate comms in Ghana. And she was, I think I don't know if she just moved back to the UK, but she was back in the UK, and she was, just exactly what we needed at that time.
Great. So from what you're saying, it means that some of your early hires came from contacts of people you either met at events or people you've known before. I've heard a startup founder say that one of the ways you hire your early team is actually from your network. Let's say you are looking for someone, a front-end developer, and then someone from your network, that person is the best person to go talk to first, and then see how that conversation goes. That's really great. Another question is this. You said something about you telling Maria that if this doesn't work in the next 2 months, we would abandon it and probably go get jobs somewhere else and continue with that, right? So how were you, apart from Iroko and the early clients that you got that Jason was able to help you with in terms of contact, how were you then able to, practical steps, please, how were you then able to reach the other clients? How were you able to contact them and then work with them?
So it was actually the other way around. They always contacted us. We've never actually done any proactive new business. We've never kind of gone out looking for work. We're just always focused on, we'll do a good job, and it's our clients who then introduce us to other people. So yeah, it's again through networks. And we were really fortunate to have some really early clients that bought into what we were doing. And we did a story actually this week with Ajua. Started in Kenya. They were one of our earliest clients. We worked with them for like a year or so, spent loads of time with them, loved the team, and they just got it, and we got on so well. And then we just started working with them again, 2 weeks ago on this kind of recent piece of news as well. So we were lucky that we had some clients that really understood us and liked our hustle and liked our quirkiness. And then they, introduced us to other clients as well going forward.
Wow, that's amazing, and to know that you've gone on from that to have startups that operate in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and Ghana is actually amazing. It's amazing work, and this follows the question that most startup founders would like to scale their business. Apart from being able to scale it in Nigeria from state to state and the likes, they would also like to work to have clients in other parts of Africa, right? You said they reach out to you, most of your clients reach out to you, that you've never done anything like reaching out to them yourself, right? But how were you able to get to that, to then say, okay, we do not just want to work with startups from Nigeria, we also want to work with startups from other parts of Africa. And was there any peculiarity in terms of doing business with startups in Nigeria and doing business with startups elsewhere in Africa?
Yeah, there's a little bit, I think there's a little bit of like nuance in how people engage. I think, yeah, I was fortunate that I'd been at Iroko. I knew lots of Nigerians. It was like there was that ready-made network, and all of my media contacts, a lot of our media contacts were Nigerian, Nigerian based as well. But I guess, when we kind of got our first Kenyan client, it was actually quite early on. We just had to spend some time like building our media relations contacts with Kenyans and understanding the media landscape a bit more. And I think I went out to Kenya a couple of times as well with clients and other stuff as well. So it was building those networks. You said like the whole the title of this is building from the ground. We have to kind of build our relationships and build our networks from the ground. So what we do is, like, in some ways we're really fortunate. We don't there's not really as many physical barriers. We can do a lot of the stuff remotely, or we can just fly into Nigeria or fly into Kenya or fly to South Africa. So in terms of us scaling, we haven't needed to have a physical presence. But I think a lot of the startups who are watching this, it is kind of quite tricky to scale, and you probably need an injection of cash to have people on the ground, pay for offices, like move, like hire, find talent. It is really hard work to scale, even at all. And I think actually Wimba, like one of the things that we struggled with a bit actually was we have struggled with scaling.
I don't know if it's just me. I think, okay. Hi, Jessica, you're back now. Okay. So continue. Yeah, I think we lost you for a minute there.
Yeah, Wimba, we struggled to scale because we were so focused on just always having like the right talent. Like I wouldn't take on any more work. Even today, we say no to quite a lot of work until we've got enough people to actually do the work really well. So scaling is tough. Like it's just really tough.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. I'm learning so much, and the highlight of what I'm learning is relationship. They come in handy, and they can help you along the way. Thank you so much for that. There's always a debate about raising investments, right? Most startups want to start their company, and they are now focused on, okay, we've started. How do we raise seed? How do we go from seed to, let's say, Series A and the likes? Did you ever have you raised funds before at Wimba?
No, we never raised any money. I started Wimba with like £3,000 of my own money. It's still in the account. We just grew organically, and that's probably why we haven't scaled that quickly, because we have grown organically. But we've always been like, it's a profitable company. So we're not high growth. So we haven't raised. We've been approached by investors. We've spoken to people who showed interest as well. We've thought about it, and it's a case of never say never, but we haven't really needed to, because I've also not wanted to scale too quickly and lose a lot of our charm, our personal touches, those types of things. And also this sounds kind of ridiculous. Wimba has always been so busy that I don't think I've ever had the kind of bandwidth to think about investment and think about like a deck or term sheets or all of those things that investors might ask about. We'll just do the work and build literally from the ground, but with no investment.
Okay, so you're saying at the moment you've not seen any need to raise funds. So talking to you now as a PR person, what's your take on companies raising fund? Because I've had this conversation over and over with friends, where some people would say, oh, you need funds, just like you said, to scale, to run faster, right? It could be maybe to hire more talent. It could be probably to build out the product from the MVP and then build it out more, right? What's your take on that? Because you also said something about keeping the uniqueness of Wimba, because once investors start coming in, you probably might have to change some of the things that you do, right? So what's your take on that?
So our sector is, PR is slightly different. The overheads are actually quite low, really. We need laptops. I had to travel a bit. We needed an office, but Yeah, we just always made sure that we had enough money in the bank to then buy the next laptop, like move into a slightly bigger office. But with tech companies, again, like it's about scale. It's about, they need the money for certain aspects, for large office space, maybe for, engineering talent is becoming more and more expensive, all those things. So they're just growing at a faster rate. So I think investment is important to build your product, take it to market, like the advertising side, marketing, all of those things cost. Like the overheads for tech startups are quite high, especially if it's a startup that's focusing on the consumer market. It's actually quite expensive to take a product to market, for consumers, certainly. So yeah, I understand that like investment is like critical, absolutely critical for so many businesses. My thing is like, I often look at companies and like, but how are you going to make money long term? Like, I think it's like, I'm always shocked when people are focusing on raising funds, but actually like, how are you just going to make money? Like, that's actually that's kind of like quite compelling. Like, how where are you going to make value going forward? I don't think I would want a business where it's just like raising funds all the time. It doesn't look like much fun. It look like you see people going gray, like just trying to raise their first like Series A.
Okay, so from what you're saying, can I infer that you're saying, yes, it's good to raise fund, but if raising fund will not help you in terms of getting to that place where you're then making a lot of revenue, that you should probably think about it again. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's thinking about that, but it's also, does having tons of money make you lazy as well in terms of your decisions? Like we're all like, Wimber is very much like bootstrap, hustle, always really, careful with our pennies as we've grown. So the idea is someone's got like 10 million in the bank all of a sudden, you're like, wow, that's massive amounts of money. I literally can't even imagine like how you start spending that cash. I'm sure if someone gave me 10 million, I would find a way to spend that cash. But it's always like, we're always thinking about how do we build a business? Like, how do we make profit? Like, how do we grow? How do we scale? Without the knowledge of, if we don't do it, if we don't make these decisions, there isn't like a safety net. There isn't like just a spare like 4 million in the bank. So I think, it is critical to raise money for certain types of sectors when you need like infrastructure investment and things like that. But for us at the moment, it hasn't been necessary.
Okay, great. And being a PR person, what do you think? What do you think about this? Do you think PR helps a startup to raise investment? Because I work for a media tech company, TechPoint Africa, right? And most people reach out to us. They want PR. They want one of our journalists to come write about them and highlight what they're doing as a business and all of that. And then when you dig deeper into that, yeah, most might be because they want traction in terms of generating leads for their business. But others go ahead to tell you that, oh, I want to attract an investor. I want someone to read about me or hear about me and reach out and then be able to invest in my business, right? Do you share the same line of thought, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think PR is really, I would say that I think PR is really important, but it isn't everything. There's no point in having great PR and then a rubbish company. Like really, you have to like there are so many moving parts when you're building a company, right? So PR is really important, but even things like, we might work with a client and they're like, oh, we want a press release to go out. We want to drive traffic to our website. And we'll look at their website and we're like, nah, like this website's no good. Like you need to sort everything else out first, because there's no point having, a burst of PR driving people to the website and then you lose people when they get to the website because it's so terrible. Or there's no point having a big burst of PR and then your product's not right. And then you'll get negative reaction because you've raised your profile, you've raised people's ideals about what you're going to do or the product or service that you have. And at that stage, like once PR has driven people to your product, but your product isn't any good, no PR is really going to stop people going on Twitter saying, oh, I bought this and it didn't work, right? They're useless people, whatever. PR is like, it's so important to help carve your niche, help define what you're doing, help drive interest in your product, help attract investors, help attract partners. I think a lot of, especially early stage companies, a lot of them probably want some early stage PR to be accepted into accelerators. That's part of the journey as well. So there's lots of reasons why people want it. And some people it's an ego thing. They just need to see their name in print. And I kind of get that as well, because you know, some people, they just want some validation. They want third-party validation from a media outlet like TechPoint. You know, there's so many reasons why PR works, but it has to be at the right time as well. And you also have to be ready in terms of your journey as an entrepreneur, as a CEO. There's no point saying, oh, I want the press release to go out, and then driving interest in you and your brands, and then not having the time to actually then speak to journalists and build those relationships and answer interview questions as well. So there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to PR. But it is really important. Like, people have to find a way to know about you. You can't just go and tell everyone about your business personally, because you will never scale like that.
Okay, great. Before I go into the next question on that line, I would like to ask, how did you come about the name Wimbat? I saw an article that was saying something about that, but I'd like for you to say it yourself. How did you come about that name?
So Wimbat is the name of the street in Brixton in South London that my grandparents and my dad and I kind of grew up in. And my granddad came to the UK from Guyana, which is in South America, in the 50s, and got together with my grandmother. And, you know, it was very rare to have like a mixed race family in the 50s. And they kind of built their life there in Wimbat Road. They had sons, my dad and my uncle. They went on to do they were both became policemen, did like really well in their careers. So it's just like a deeply personal place. Like, it's a place where you're like an immigrant family grew and did really well in the UK at a time which was like deeply racist and, you know, very stressful time. And yeah, it's just like, it's a really happy place for me.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to divert away from that a little. So for also my capacity at TechPoint Africa, I also speak with some startup founders that are looking for PR when I see that what they actually might be needing at that point in time will be marketing or advertising, right? What do you think the difference between these is and these two are, and how, what do you think, how do you think startup founders in Africa are getting it wrong when it comes to these two distinct things?
So I think a lot of startup founders they do struggle with the difference between PR and marketing and advertising. And, you know, advertising, you are completely in control of what you put out. You have a design team, you put together the graphic, you pay for the advertising slot, and you place it there. So it is you telling people that you are what you do, you're fantastic, etc. PR is shaping people's opinions. And that's the difficult thing. It's like, it's shifting people's opinions and building like probably more slowly building a brand and building a name as well. But you also have to open yourself up for people critiquing you. You know, people having opinions about you. You're actually helping to define people's opinions through a journalist. And I think sometimes people don't like it if, you know, if a journalist doesn't exactly use exactly the right words that you want to say about your company. But it's a journalist's prerogative to they can't just follow key messages, right? Because then that is like marketing or advertising. That's just, you know, that's just advertising copy. So yeah, I think a lot of, I think some entrepreneurs do struggle with the PR side of things, and they also don't like to be questioned, some of them. So if you put an advert out, again, that's just you, your brand, it's exactly what you want. But if a journalist asks you some difficult questions that you don't want to answer, some people are not actually used to being scrutinized by a third party. And that often causes some problems as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Thank you for making that distinction between those two, because a lot of people. So let me phrase this as a question then. So is PR for generating leads, or is marketing and advertising for generating leads? Because you see people who they want to generate leads for their business, right? Mm-hmm. But they also want PR. They want you to do PR for them. They want one of our journalists to write about them or feature them, right? When you go deeper, you then find out that they are looking to generate leads for their business. What was your thought on that, please?
Yeah, I think so. Marketing and advertising are probably more lead generating. Again, but PR is kind of helping to inform people's decisions. So if, for example, and I think that's why, you know, you need to have strong, like your marketing team needs to be speaking to your PR team. So you're building the brand together. So say, for example, you're seeing an advert on, I don't know, like Instagram, and you're looking at it And all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually, no, I remember I read about that brand on Bella Niger. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, actually, you know, someone said something really good on Bella Niger about them. So that's not like the Bella Niger article, for example, if it's a consumer product, might not have been a lead generation, but it's kind of helping to inform your decision. So you're like, I read about that, that's cool. And now I'm seeing the advert, the marketing lead, it's then shop now, whatever you do on Instagram. So it's like, it's 360. It's like you make a decision based on lots of different points, like lots of different basically data points. So you're like, oh, I read about so-and-so here, or I so-and-so there. You know, even you've said that you read about me, you read an article here, you read an article there, but you might have heard about me from somewhere else as well. You might have seen me on Twitter, you might have seen me on Instagram. It's kind of like building up layers upon layers of understanding, and it's like putting together a puzzle of something to make a decision. So lead generation isn't just, you know, we need a link, we need a link. There's lots of, so PR is more of a kind of like the emotional side of like helping you make decisions. Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. So for our audience, please prepare your questions you'd like to ask Jessica. We'll soon be rounding up with this session of this program, and then we'll take your questions, right? So please prepare that. So in terms of Wimbat, what are the greatest challenges you say you're facing right now that you're trying to find solutions to? So the challenges are, I think, just talent, hiring the right talent. I think a lot of startups will say that. But what we do is like, everything we do is like deeply personal. So we do have to get like culture fit in terms of personalities, people's skill levels. You have to be a great writer, you have to be good at relationship. You know, the kind of people that work at Wimbat are like, I know I would say this, but like just excellent. And hyper talented, and you have to be good at multitasking. So finding those the right people, that's like my main focus. In terms of challenges, like scaling, as I mentioned earlier, has been a challenge for us. I think probably me as a business owner, I'm a blockage for a lot of stuff. I think a lot of CEOs would say that as well, because so much stuff will like just stop with me. It's really difficult to juggle internal stuff, building the infrastructure of the company, new business, client work, all these types of things as well. So I know that I've been a bit of a blockage, and I'm trying to like kind of fix that and make that less problematic and less challenging as well. But yeah, I think, you know, we're fortunate that new business isn't a challenge. You know, we have opportunities. For me at the moment, it's being able to basically take on all the opportunities that we've generated for ourselves over the years. Great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. Really learning a lot. We'll be going to the questions and answers very soon, very soon. If I may ask, some media, international media companies are somehow getting into Africa, right? Hiring talent, even if sometimes it's remote, in Africa, right? How does that affect your work at Wimbat? Does it affect it in any way, or is this a welcome development where you feel, yes, we can all work together for the greater good of the ecosystem? So how do you mean? So sorry, who's hiring talent, remote talent? So the likes of what is it called, TechCrunch, and the likes. I see a lot of adverts there. They're looking for reporters, writers from Africa, yeah. Right? So does this affect your work in any way? I think it's made it easier, actually. It's great. You know, we'll always just build a relationship with someone long term wherever they are. You know, irrespective of geography, we have the same approach in terms of how we connect with people. We try to be useful, like we build those relationships. But yeah, for us, I mean, it is better. The more people who are writing about African tech, African business, you know, the sector that we're working in, you know, and, you know, local and international outlets as well, it's better, and it gives us more opportunities to showcase our clients' work. Great. Thank you so much for that. Starting out, some founders build products, right? And after a while, they then discovered that probably there was no market for that product. How were you able to know and realize and understand that there was a market for the service that Wimbat was providing? Because at that
point in time, you only had Iroko and one other clients, like you mentioned. How was there that nudge in you that says, what if there's no market here, right? Were you able to do any kind of research or whatever to find that out?
Do you know what? I'm going to be really boring and say no, didn't do any research. The market just grew with us. You know, Winbot has grown with how African tech has grown. You know, in terms of, you know, and more companies are securing investment, which means they have more money to invest in things like PR, marketing, advertising services, et cetera, et cetera. But then obviously more money coming into the market means there's more competitors. So interestingly then, when there's more competitors for these like products, they want to carve out their niche, which means they want PR, because they use PR to help carve out their niche, build their profiles, and it kind of grows from there. So no, I didn't do any research. We've just grown with the market.
Okay. So at this point in time, we'll be going into the Q&A. I have a couple of questions here. I think some you've touched already, others I will ask. So this one is from Bayo Adewoye. He says, as a startup building a tech-enabled platform, how easy is it to launch out in a market like Nigeria, most especially when you don't have enough funds or partners to help you in PR?
Yeah, I think you have to, as an early day startup, you have to think about your resource. Like you have to be really, really careful with your resource where you spend your money. So you definitely don't need a PR agency really early days. I think that when you are at that stage though, you have to be really extra and proactive in going to networking events, meeting people, like building your word of mouth and building your community as well is really important. And all of that stuff is free. I mean, some events obviously you have to pay for, but it's free, but it takes time. And you have to then balance up with like, how much is your time worth? So it's like, yeah, you have to be proactive. You have to go out and do things and meet people and have people talk about you, which is like another form of PR really, but it's just not, you know, in print version. But, you know, one of the things that we worked on last year and we'll do again this year, and we did it in partnership with TechPoint as well. We did something called Winbot Office Hours, where we actually wanted to work with the early stage startups that don't have money for PR yet, either in-house or an agency. And we put together a program. So it was, I gave a kind of overview about, this is communications, this is what PR is, these are kind of the things that you should think about. And then we worked with Carla Einer as well from Ventures Platform, one of the most prolific like VCs, seed stages in Africa. And Carla gave an amazing presentation and it was all linked to communications, but how you communicate to the press is often the same way how you might communicate to investors and how you need to present yourself. So it was kind of like, you know, it is important to be written about in TechPoint, Tech Cabal, Tech Moran, Disrupt Africa, all of those outlets as well, because then he's kind of like, him and his colleagues have always got an eye out for interesting companies to invest in. But then he was also talking to people about how you present yourself to investors as well, the sort of questions that investors will ask. And interestingly, investors will often ask similar questions to journalists as well. So Collar gave a really good presentation and he actually got someone to pitch to him online. It was really good. And then Adewale, the publisher of TechPoint, gave a presentation as well about building relationships with journalists, what journalists care about, what makes a good story, how to be useful. So we structured that, and then all of the startups in the cohort had like one-on-one sessions with people in my team and to talk about things that's specific to them. So some of them, they focused on sorting out their website and sought advice on that. Others, you know, it was like, how do they do their first press release? How do they build relationships? What makes a good news story? So there are programs around for startups. So programs like Winbot Office Hours, and there's other ones as well. I can't just like sell my own market here, but
please do.
There are others around. So I think in early stage like startups, you have to look for free resources, and also like the internet is your friend. You can do free PR if you've got the time. How do I write a press release? Look at how other press releases are written. You can try and do it yourself. How do you build relationships with journalists? Who are they going to go to at TechPoint? You know, those types of things that we go through, but it does take time. And obviously as a startup CEO, where you're probably doing finances, you're probably doing business development, you're doing recruitment, you're probably, you know, making lunches, like everything, your hustle is like 150% all day, every day. PR is often not like a priority.
Okay, so I'll follow that up with the question here, although the attendee is an anonymous attendee. He said, at what stage does a company seek PR? And have you rejected a potential client before?
Wow.
So I think maybe what this person is talking about is, have you had a client where you said, oh, we're not going to do this for you because we think you're not at that stage yet, right? And if you've done that, what stage do you then think a startup will be at before they can go after PR?
So I think it depends on whether or not they have the bandwidth, whether or not you actually have something to say. And this is one of the things we always say to companies, like, what's the so what? What is the story? Just because you want PR, it doesn't mean you're actually interesting to everyone else. Yeah. So I would always use the example of like Jason and Iroko. Jason was like the perfect PR combination. Nollywood Online. I mean, literally no one had done it. Yeah. So Nollywood, Nigerian Hollywood, we could do so much storytelling, especially in the West, so much storytelling about this like Nigerian film like industry that no one in the West had heard of, but even it's like the most popular form of content in Africa. So there was that. And then you're like, oh, it's tech. So tech was kind of cool. And then you had like an enigmatic founder and CEO, an orator that Jason is. Like, if you ever see Jason speak or meet him, you will never forget. Like, he's just an engaging, amazing, interesting, solid, dynamic person. So he was like, it was the perfect mix for PR. Interesting, and then you raise money as well. Like, it was just so many cool things we could talk about and do. But some companies they don't have a dynamic founder. And that founder actually might not be able to talk about the company in a particularly interesting or engaging way. Some companies, they're looking for PR, but they haven't really achieved anything yet. There's no milestones. They might be working in a sector that's kind of oversaturated. And it's really, really hard to say to people, okay, I get it, but so what? And you'll get really early stage companies and they're like, yeah, I just want to be in like CNN and Wall Street Journal and Economist. And they're just like reeling these companies off. And you're like, how? Like, why would this journalist write about you? Because just because you care about you, it doesn't mean that the journalist or the journalist readers care about you. So it's quite difficult to say to people. And we spend a lot of time with when we do work with early stage startups going, but what is that so what factor? Because when you're in the midst of like building your business, everything matters. Like, every single thing matters to your business, right? You do payroll 1 month, like you manage to get through another month and you pay people. That's like news to you. You done like a small partnership with someone, that's news to you. You've hired an admin person, that's news to you, because everything is deeply personal about your company. But like the Wall Street Journal does not care about that, right? So unless, for example, your second hire is, Mark Zuckerberg, all of a sudden that's like pretty mega, right? That's really fantastic news. But it's difficult to say to people who are like so personally entrenched in their business, like, yeah, but we just because you think it's cool doesn't mean everyone else does. So we have rejected clients previously. Sometimes it's not been the right time for them. Another reason why sometimes we reject clients as well, of conflict of interest. If we're working with someone in a similar space, we reject clients. So yeah. And the right time is when you've got something cool to say about your company and you need to start kind of defining what you're doing and showcasing what you're doing.
Okay, so I think a question here from Telema Davids, right? She's asking, and the person is asking, sorry, I don't know if it's a he or a she. He say, how would you define a startup from the context of PR? And are startups all about tech?
So the startups we mostly work with are all about tech, but of course there are loads of other startups in the hospitality space, fashion, all sorts. So they're not all tech, although most companies will have an element of tech to them. So even, you'll see emerging kind of sectors like fashion, for example. It's very difficult to build a fashion brand without having some sort of online platform to sell your stuff. Like, why not? Like, you've got to open yourself to the world. Sorry, the other part of the question was, how would you define a startup? Well, I guess, it's like how big a company is and their kind of like level of scaling. So, for example, Andela or M-Kopa used to be startups. I wouldn't refer to them now as startups, right? They're companies with generating millions of dollars of revenue, huge global teams. They've raised millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. So they're kind of like growth stage companies now. So I think at that stage, that's when it kind of, goes from being a startup, moving from a startup to a high growth company.
Okay, and I don't think you touched on that question, Jessica. Have you rejected a client before, and why?
Oh, no, I did. Yeah, we've rejected loads of clients, and
Wow.
like we have for various reasons. Sometimes, like, yeah, we haven't felt that there's anything newsworthy, so we've rejected clients before when they're like, they have a long list, they have really high expectations, and the team and I were scratching our heads, going, yeah, but I don't think that we can meet those expectations because we don't think your story or your company is interesting enough. So yeah, we have done before. We've rejected clients for being rude to members of my team.
Okay, great.
And we rejected clients again when there's a conflict of interest.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, when you say conflict of interest, what do you mean? Probably you're working with someone in that industry already.
Yeah, so someone who, obviously we couldn't work with two like very direct competitors. So
okay.
say for example, like, we work with Kobo 360, we couldn't work with Lorry. Distance, because they're just too close to each other.
Okay, okay. I think there's an interesting question here from someone called Anonymous attendee. He said a few African publications have complained about being sidelined by African companies once they grow or reach a certain milestone. They send their releases to the likes of TechCrunch. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm with the African publications. I just can't believe it that people don't kind of nurture and foster like relationships with like their immediate community. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I think TechCrunch is an amazing outlet. I've always worked with them. We had two stories on TechCrunch this week, both non-fundraise stories as well, which was great. Loved working on them. The opportunity and the platform is great, but we also send the press release and working with all the local outlets as well. So to ignore the local outlets, and it's often the local outlets that have covered these companies from early days, before, and then everyone gets obsessed about their TechCrunch story. We're really greedy at Wimbot, right? We want both. We want the target to do, of course we want a TechCrunch story if the story's big enough, but we want to work with TechPoint. Like, we'd be really upset if a story got on TechCrunch and then it didn't get on TechPoint. So, and we'll change the angles as well. We'll think of different ways of like pitching the story or working with the journalists. But yeah, it annoys me that some African founders kind of ignore their community of like their media community as they scale.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And a colleague of mine would like to know, have you lost a client to a competitor before? And if you have, how did that feel?
Oh, interesting one. Have we lost it to a competitor? Maybe. Just trying to think. Maybe, yeah. How do we feel? To be honest, like, it's business, because sometimes you just kind of have you run out of steam with a client, or you've kind of gone along the journey as long as you can, and then they move on. And we have had it before where we've been in discussions with people, and then they will go to a competitor, and then it doesn't last long with the competitor, and then they'll come to Wimbot. And that back and forth, like, is kind of annoying, but again, it's business. People just have to try it out. Yeah.
Okay, so I also have a question here from Chidebere. I think this question is directed to raising funds, raising investment, right? So while we're talking about Wimbot, you said you started with $2,000, £2,000, sorry,
£3,000.
And you still have that in your account, right? So she wanted to know that what if the person wanted to know, sorry, that what if you're starting out with zero budget? You have this product or you have this idea, right? But you don't have any funds to, you had the opportunity to have access to that 2,000, right? What if that person doesn't have any funds at the moment? What would you advise them to do?
I mean, you got to get some cash somewhere. So you need to be speaking to friends and family. And this is when you have to hone your pitch skills. This is when you have to start really like hustling hard, pitching to friends and family, finding some money to just get to the next stage. So even if it's just small amounts of money, you just if you need to hire someone, you just have to find that money from somewhere. So either you get a full-time job and you have this piece of work as a side hustle and you save. But yeah, it's very difficult to do stuff without any cash at all. And or you have to then go to, speak to investors. But also, if an investor knows that you're really broke, like they've got a lot of leverage, they can really ask you, give you some really brutal terms as well. So then you have to ask yourself, at what stage are you willing to give away 70% of your company for $2,000? Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, you have to save, you have to find a way. And also, one of the things is that if you really believe in your product, you should start making money from it in some form. And then that's kind of quite compelling, right? So try and make money from your product, and reinvest that back into your company or what you're trying to build.
As a follow-up to that, how many percent do you think an early stage startup should be able to give away? You mentioned 70%. That's awfully too much, right? You've given away all of your company, right? At that initial stage, let's say at the seed level, because I have friends that when they started, they pitched to some Nigerian investors, angel investors, that will be asking for things as much as 40 to 50%, right? At that early stage, just because, like you said, probably they've looked at them and say, oh, this guy is broke, doesn't have anything. Maybe if I give him this money, he will jump at it, right? So what's your advice in terms of what's come to worst? This is the last straw. This is where I should stop. What percentage do you think that is?
So I don't think I'm qualified to answer that, because I've never got into those negotiations. I own 100% of my business. But I think that, people do kind of get bogged down about it. But at the end of the day, if you really need the cash, then you'll have to just cut a deal. But then again, it's all about leverage and how much you can, how much control you have. So for me, I've always thought, if Winbot ever takes investment or secures any investment, it will be at a stage where we're not desperate for the money. It will literally accelerate growth, not to keep us afloat, because then it will be in a really strong bargaining position. But I think it's documented, Jason, Bastian Gotter was Jason's early investor. So we went to university together as well, and Bastian just kind of invested. I have a feeling Bastian had 50% of the company early days, but Jason was well, it's better to have 50% because the company would not have existed.
Than 100% of nothing. Yeah, I get that.
What's the point of having 100% of nothing? It's better to have 50% of now a multi-million-dollar company. I mean, obviously, diluted since then because they've taken on more investment, but Jason just had to get it off the ground, and it was only Bastian who would fund him. Out of all of his networks, it was literally only Bastian who would invest that money. So yeah, you just have to be really shrewd. But I think that in terms of how much percentage you should take, I don't know.
Thank you for that honest feedback. Okay, so Adenuga would like to know, if you're choosing a PR company to work with, what are the things you should be looking out for? There are lots of PR companies in Nigeria and all over Africa, the world. If I have a startup now, and because I'm one person that is also looking to start mine someday soon, right? How do you pick out a PR company to work with? What are the things you should be looking out for while trying to find a PR company to work with?
So I think it's their results. How well do they do? Look at the caliber of their clients, look at the kind of coverage that they're getting for their clients as well, and word of mouth in terms of speaking to other people who have PR agencies, and just understanding do those people enjoy the process? Are they working really well with a team? Do they have a good team? Because PR is quite personal as well in terms of storytelling, telling the narrative of your business and your growth story, etc. So you have to kind of get along with people as well. So if you have a continuously fractious relationship, you're oh, is it really worth it? So yeah, I think it's but also, do you just like the people, and do you get along with them, and do you think that they're going to go that extra mile and work really hard for you as well? So those are the things, but you're only as good as your last kind of couple of campaigns and your press pushes, right? So again, you could be a PR agency, and if you're one of those people you're on Twitter all the time and you're just telling people how great you are, but you're never seeing any coverage from them, you're everyone knows I just tweet stuff like Beyonce gifts and a bit here and there about my client work, right? I never say anything really profound, or I don't talk about the PR. There's no long threads or anything from me. I don't have anything deep and meaningful to say really, because I am so busy working on my client work. So, and so is the rest of my team. Like we're very, 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 very busy all the time. So for us, like we don't need to keep saying, you know, this is how you do this, or we're not, weirdly enough, we probably should be more thought leaders, but we just don't have the time because we have so much like work on, and we just focus on client work first. So for us, that's kind of like our selling point. We don't produce lots of content from Wimbart, we just do a really good job for our clients. And then we get referrals and people introduce us, and we kind of build a brand from there.
Okay, we've touched a lot around funding, raising funds, right? And talked about the right place where you need to be. But someone is still asking here, he says, Justin says, what's the right moment to seek for funding in your company as a startup? I think we've touched on that. Maybe you want to say something more about that.
I think it's when you just need the money to keep growing or to build. Again, like I'm not an investor, so I'm kind of like, it's not really, I don't give investment advice or insight on that. But, you know, when do you take investment is when you probably when you've got a product and when you've got when you've got some traction, right? It's again, it's all about negotiations and it's about leverage. You know, it's great if you can find an investor who will invest lots of money in just an idea. That would, you know, that's great. But like, how much are they going to invest? Because you're kind of very high risk at that stage as well, if you haven't built a product. So.
Okay, and what do you think the future of PR is, especially in Africa? What do you think the future of PR is?
Wow, that's a pretty deep question. I think it's going to be a growing market. Because, you know, more businesses are growing, more businesses are scaling. They're going to need to define themselves amongst their competitors. They're going to grow more and more companies, especially in the tech space. They need to secure funding. That's their growth hack is investment. So in order to get investment, you know, unless they went to some fantastic, you know, school and they have great networks already, you do need the PR to reinforce that, to get in front of new people as well. But I think it's a sector that will need to be formalized a bit more, but I think it's definitely, like I think it's a massive growing market actually.
Okay. Someone is asking here, do you have an office in Africa? And are you looking to open one soon?
We don't have an office in Africa, and I don't see us opening one in the near future, like definitely not this year, but you never know. I'm like, never say never. It depends. If we opened an office in Africa, I mean, it was almost certainly going to be Nigeria first, because that's where a lot of our clients are, that's where our networks are. But for me, it's a talent thing. Like if we would have to find like the right people who really, really, really understood how Wimbart works, because one of the main things, and we talked about it earlier in terms of talent, sometimes we have to collaborate with other PR agencies, you know, we work with them, or just seeing how we work is very, very different to how a lot of other agencies work. So it would be very difficult for me to have someone who doesn't understand like Wimbart's kind of quirkiness and nuances and intensity and our approach to how we work with clients. So it'd be very difficult for me to like have someone who didn't have the Wimbart ways like fully embedded in them to set up an office.
Okay, I'm personally asking this from your experience. You've worked for organizations and you're now doing your own thing. You've built a great organization like Wimbart. How does it feel? What's the difference between working with someone and now running your own thing? I know doing your own thing is 100% risk on you. Which is easier, as it were, and which would you advise an individual to pursue?
That's a good question. I think nothing kind of prepares you for having your own business. I don't think. I don't have a degree in business. I've never really worked in business, but I was lucky that I'd worked with Jason and other entrepreneurs that I think kind of switched me on to some of the things. It's really hard work. And I think in some ways I've actually had an easier start than a lot of other people. As we said right at the top of the conversation, I already was working in the market. I had, you know, Jason, you know, kick me out and force me to become an entrepreneur or business person, not entrepreneur, I guess, build a business. He was my first client. So my move into building a business was a lot smoother and easier than others. And I'm always like eternally grateful for that. But building it and scaling it has been really, really, really tough. You can't take your eye off the ball. You don't ever stop. Everything, again, like when I was talking about everything's personal to startup founders. I include myself in that. Like everything is still personal to me about my business. And it is actually quite exhausting. It's really, really tiring, caring about stuff all the time. And always having to be, thinking about new business, thinking about so many different factors. But at the same time, I love it, and I love my business, and I love like all the people who work with me. I love like loads of my clients. Like it's amazing. So it's balance. So I'm definitely, I made the right decision to do it. I'm glad Jason pushed me into it. I'm glad that I chose to scale it and build as I have done. And I've, it's definitely not been perfect along the way, and I've definitely like had challenges, and would probably make some decisions a little a bit differently, but that's easy to say in hindsight. But I love it. I love what I do, and I can't imagine now going to work unless someone offers me like, I don't know, retirement money to go and work in another because I just like I get my energy from my clients, my team, and I wonder whether or not that's always the same if you work in a big organization.
Okay, great. I have this question for you. When was the last time you woke up and looked at it all and asked yourself, wow, what am I doing here? And get that kind of, oh my God, am I over my head here? What am I doing? When was the last time that happened?
Probably like when I woke up at like 4 hours ago. It is, honestly, it's so personal, and it's really exhausting. It's a lot. But you know what, actually, I mentioned it earlier, we had 2 stories on TechCrunch this week, and we worked with 2 clients, and we worked like just seeing the coverage come in, and it wasn't a fundraise announcement, and it was just really good to work on some different stuff. And I was like, yeah, like what we're doing is actually quite interesting and quite special. Yeah, so I feel every day I feel a bit in over my head, but I feel like I'm managing it okay. Cool. Always like, but I think anyone always thinks you can do better, you can do better, you can do better. So yeah, you always wake up a little bit panicky. But I feel like confident in what we're building in our brand, in our company, the integrity that we hold, the results that we get. So I think everyone has a bit of imposter syndrome, and I do too, but not to the extent that I think, I still think that I'm still confident enough to think that Winbut is like really good at what we do. And I've got the confidence to say that, and I'm happy with our progress, and I'm happy with what my team does.
And how do you feel when you see some of the brands that you've worked with go ahead to raise a lot of money, and also you've worked with Paystack, and Paystack is a unicorn right now. What kind of feeling do you get about that?
I love it because there's like, you work with clients and you're like, okay, that's fine, it's just a transaction. But like someone like Scholler, for example, he deserves every single bit of recognition he gets. He deserves the sale, the acquisition, everything that he gets, because he's genuinely like a fantastic person. And actually, I will try and model myself on someone like Scholler, who is like a kind of like a nice person in business, but also like a killer. Like he's built and he's grown and he's scaled his business. And like, I think like it's amazing to see people do well. Like I'm quite an empath, and I actually enjoy other people's successes a lot. I get excited, I get overly excited for other people and like seeing them do well. So I really love it.
Great. I have a question here from Emmanuel Peters. I don't quite understand it so well, but I'll read it out. Maybe you get what the person is trying to pass across. He said, talking about the Winbut working culture, how do you inculcate this culture and not look so strict? What also could these cultures be, like an example? So I think maybe the person is talking about the working culture, the kind of culture that you've built at Winbut, right? Where you need to be nice, but you also need to be on people to get stuff done, right? How do you strike that balance between getting work done and also being a human being, if I may put it like that?
I mean, maybe you want to ask like some members of my team, like if they think I'm a human being. I don't know. I hope so. I try to be, but like human beings are also like deeply flawed as well, and I know that I am. But I think again it goes back to everyone's kind of like in control of their own like success at Winbut. Like, so people that work really hard, like my team works so hard, and they really, really care. and they go above and beyond for every single client. But I think probably I hire people who are like that. And then we embed it as a working culture as well. But then they see the fruits of their labors. They see the amazing results that they're getting for their clients. Like they're getting emails from the clients. Thanks for this piece of work. Wow, we weren't expecting so much coverage. That piece of work was exactly what we needed. Or this story actually helped us hire like 5 new people that we were looking for. Like it led to this. Like they're seeing the results. And so that's like pushes you on. Like it's more than just getting paid, right? You just get paid, okay, fine. But it's people who really care about what they're doing and like deeply passionate, and they're kind of competitive as well. We get competitive for our clients. We want them to do really well. And so it goes back to the whole, we work really hard, we get really good results, we build amazing relationships with our clients, with journalists and everything. So it's this constant like feedback. So it pushes you on in terms of your career and how you're doing, but also not one person in my company has ever been responsible for new business. Like there has never been a time where as an agency, we're like stressing about where's this new client coming from? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Whereas all other PR agencies that I've ever worked at or know about, it's like constantly stressing, like, where's this new piece of work coming from? So because everyone is excellent and doing really, really, really well, that is our new business pipeline. That's our own PR. Just doing a good job is our own PR. So yeah, that's embedded in the working culture. And I think people who didn't understand that like need for intensity and excellence would struggle at Winbart, definitely.
Okay, this one is from me. How do you feel personally about employee stock option? I personally feel that you get to a point as a startup where you need to employ some talent, right? And you would like them to probably stay and probably look at it and say, this is mine also, right? How do you feel about that? Do you think it's something that startups should do more of, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's something that Winbart's going to have to consider at some point as well, as we grow. I think stock options are really good to, you want people to stay, you want people to grow within the company, especially early stages. It's like you need people to believe in your like vision and your dream, because it really, really is hard work at a startup. Like it's so hard. Winbart, we've never really had the kind of ability or capacity to like have like massive shiny offices, and like it's not very shiny yet. Like we're still in that scrappy stage, or I have been for a really long time. So yeah, I think stock options like are necessary for all types of companies as well.
Okay, and while doing it, should it be open to everyone in the organization, or are there a few set of people, or what are the strategies that you think organizations should go about, should use while going about doing that?
I don't know, actually. It's not, because I haven't implemented it in my own company yet. It's not something I can talk authoritatively on. I don't think you can just have stock options for selected people. I don't know if that sounds very fair. I'm sure that would cause some quite serious division, but I'm not sure. But everything has to be it has to be fair. It has to be democratic, but also at the same time, like if you are giving stock options, like it's not a just because. Like people have to work really hard. Like you have to really understand that, it's not just like a just because. Like you get stock options, it adds another layer of intensity.
Okay, great. It's been a great conversation so far. I think we've covered about 90% of the questions that we have here. And thank you so much, Jessica, for being here with us and sharing your experience. I've learned a lot. I've been writing down a lot of the things I'm learning. Thank you so much. For our audience who would like to probably talk to Jessica or follow Winbart on social media, you can follow Winbart on socials at Winbart or at Winbart Hope. That's on Twitter, and Winbart PR on Instagram, right? Thank you so much, guys, for attending. Thank you, Jessica. Do you have any final few words you would like to give to us? You'd like to say to us? Words of encouragement.
In terms of words of encouragement, I think you just have to have like confidence and be kind of like critical in what you're doing as well. But I'm like a firm believer, and like this is like terrible from a PR person, right? But like don't believe the hype too much. Like if you just do a good job, then your PR does the work. It's so much easier to do PR if like what you're doing is just cool and interesting or impactful, or there's growth. So yeah, I'm kind of like, don't just do PR just because, like, be strategic, be tactical, think, so what, think about like, have you got the capacity to do stuff? So even sometimes with me, we don't really do much Winbut PR, because unless we've got capacity to take on new clients, because what's the point of drumming on up loads of potential new business and then saying, oh, actually, no, we can't work with you. So be strategic, think about these things, like, why do you need these things? And use your time wisely as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you guys for attending, and thank you, Jessica. We are really grateful to have you here, share your experience with us. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for attending Building from Ground Up. This is an initiative of the UK Tech Hub in partnership with TechPoint Africa. Thank you so much, Jessica. And you can follow the UK Tech Hub on social media to find out more about this kind of innovative ideas and programs that could be of help to you as an individual, a startup founder, or an entrepreneur. Thank you guys for attending. It's been great being here. And thank you so much, Jessica. Please take care of yourself, and bye-bye.